Ollie never imagined that one simple favor could turn his entire world upside down. It was just another exhausting evening at the office when his boss, Mr. Hamid, called him in. Hamid was a powerful man. Confident, well-respected, and always in control. Ollie had worked under him for 3 years, learning his habits, his temper, and most importantly, his rules. "I need you to do something for me," Hamid said, barely looking up from his laptop. "Sarah's car is in the shop. Drop her home." Ollie hesitated. It wasn't that he didn't want to help, but the idea of being alone with his boss's wife made him uneasy. Sarah was stunning, elegant in a way that made people stop and stare. She carried herself with effortless grace, her presence demanding attention without a single word. He had seen her a few times when she visited the office, always dressed to perfection, always reserved. Of course, sir," Ollie replied, trying to hide his discomfort. Minutes later, he stood near the company's black luxury sedan as Sarah walked toward him. She wore a dark blue dress that hugged her figure, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor. She smiled, a small, unreadable expression. "Ollie, right?" she said as she slid into the passenger seat. "Yes, ma'am." He chuckled. "No need for that. Just Sarah." As they pulled out onto the quiet evening streets, Ollie kept his focus on the road. But he could feel her eyes on him, studying him. "I don't think we've ever spoken properly," she said after a moment. Ollie nodded. "I guess there's never been a reason to." "There's always a reason," she murmured, almost to herself. The conversation drifted from work to meaningless topics. Traffic, the weather, music. But there was something deliberate about the way she spoke, as if she was testing him, waiting for a reaction. Every now and then, her hand would brush against the car door, her fingers tapping lightly, a slow rhythm that made Ollie strangely aware of the space between them. As they neared her house, she turned slightly in her seat, her perfume filling the car. "Do you always do whatever Hamid asks?" Ollie frowned. "He's my boss. It's my job." She smiled again, but this time there was something almost playful in it. "Loyalty is rare." The house was as grand as he expected. A 2-story villa with modern architecture, surrounded by high walls that kept the world out. He parked outside the gate, exhaling slightly in relief. "Thank you for the ride," Sarah said, but she didn't make a move to leave. Instead, she tilted her head, watching him. Ollie felt a shift in the air. It was subtle, but unmistakable. "Would you like to come in for a coffee?" she asked, her voice light, casual, yet something about it made his pulse jump. Ollie hesitated. He should say no. He knew that. But he didn't move. Ollie's mind raced as he stood at Sarah's doorstep, the weight of his decision pressing heavily upon him. He knew he should decline her invitation, but an inexplicable force compelled him to accept. As he stepped inside, the ambience of the house enveloped him, a blend of warmth and sophistication, yet tinged with an underlying sense of isolation. "Make yourself comfortable," Sarah said, her voice smooth as silk. She moved gracefully to the kitchen, leaving Ollie alone in the living room. He glanced around, noting the tasteful decor and the faint scent of jasmine lingering in the air. Moments later, she returned with 2 steaming cups of coffee. She handed one to Ollie, her fingers brushing against his ever so slightly, sending an unexpected shiver down his spine. "Thank you," he murmured, taking a cautious sip. They sat in silence for a moment, the only sound being the distant hum of city life beyond the walls. Sarah broke the silence, her tone casual yet probing. "Do you enjoy working for Hamid?" Ollie nodded. "Yes, he's been a good mentor." She smiled faintly, but there was a hint of something else in her eyes, a flicker of sadness or perhaps longing. "He's very dedicated to his work," she said softly, almost to herself. Ollie sensed an unspoken tension, a vulnerability she was revealing. He felt a pang of empathy but reminded himself of the boundaries he needed to maintain. "Dedication is important," he replied cautiously. Sarah's gaze met his, her eyes searching his face as if seeking an answer to an unasked question. "Do you believe in fate, Ollie?" The question caught him off guard. I'm not sure. I suppose some things are meant to happen. She leaned in slightly, her expression enigmatic. And what about the things that aren't meant to happen but do anyway? Ollie felt the air grow thicker, the room smaller. He struggled to find a response, acutely aware of the narrowing distance between them. Sarah, I should probably go, he said, attempting to rise. But she reached out, her hand gently resting on his arm. The touch was electric, rooting him to the spot. Stay, she whispered, her eyes pleading yet filled with an undeniable desire. Ali's mind screamed at him to leave, to escape the impending danger. But his body betrayed him, drawn to her like a moth to a flame. Before he could process his actions, he found himself leaning in, their breaths mingling, the world outside ceasing to exist. Their lips met in a hesitant kiss, a collision of fear and yearning. The coffee cup slipped from Ali's hand, shattering on the floor, but neither paid it any mind. Sarah pulled back slightly, her eyes searching his. Are you sure about this? Ali's heart pounded in his chest, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. But in that moment, all he could focus on was her, the intoxicating allure of the forbidden. No, he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. But I don't want to stop. With that, they surrendered to the magnetic pull between them, losing themselves in a tempest of passion and recklessness. The night unfolded in a blur of heated embraces and whispered confessions, each moment more intoxicating than the last. Ollie knew he was crossing a line, venturing into uncharted territory with no promise of return. As dawn's light filtered through the curtains, reality began to seep back in. Ollie lay beside Sarah, their breaths steadying, the weight of their actions settling heavily upon them. He turned to her, guilt gnawing at the edges of his euphoria. What happens now? Sarah sighed, her fingers tracing idle patterns on his chest. Now we face the consequences. Ali's stomach churned at the thought. He had betrayed his boss, compromised his own morals, and entangled himself in a web of deceit. But as he looked into Sarah's eyes, he couldn't deny the connection they had forged, a bond born from shared loneliness and unspoken desires. We'll figure it out, she murmured, pressing a soft kiss to his lips. Ollie wanted to believe her, to cling to the fragile hope that they could navigate the storm they had unleashed. But deep down, he knew the path ahead was fraught with peril, and the price of their indiscretion had yet to be paid. As they lay entwined, the world outside continued its indifferent march forward, unaware of the fragile house of cards teetering on the brink of collapse. And in the quiet aftermath of their forbidden union, Ollie couldn't shake the feeling that their lives would never be the same again. Ali's life began to unravel in the days following his indiscretion with Sarah. The initial thrill was quickly replaced by a gnawing guilt that shadowed his every move. At work, he avoided Mr. Hamid's gaze, the weight of his betrayal pressing heavily upon him. Each interaction with his boss felt like navigating a minefield, the fear of discovery lurking at every corner. Sarah, on the other hand, seemed unfazed. She continued her daily routines with an air of nonchalance, as if their clandestine encounter had been nothing more than a fleeting indiscretion. This stark contrast between their reactions only served to heighten Ali's anxiety. One evening, as Ollie sat alone in his modest apartment, his phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. We need to talk. His heart raced as he read the words. A sense of impending doom settled over him, and he knew he couldn't ignore her summons. They agreed to meet at a secluded cafe on the outskirts of the city, a place where the likelihood of being recognized was minimal. When Ollie arrived, Sarah was already seated at a corner table, her demeanor calm and composed. He slid into the seat opposite her, his palms slick with sweat. Thank you for coming, she began, her voice steady. Ollie nodded, unable to find his voice. I've been thinking about what happened between us, she continued, her gaze unwavering. It was a mistake. The words hit Ollie like a physical blow, even though he had anticipated them. He opened his mouth to respond, but she held up a hand to stop him. Let me finish, she said firmly. We can't change what happened, but we can control what happens next. Ollie swallowed hard, his throat dry. What do you suggest? We end this now, she replied without hesitation. No more meetings, no more messages. We go back to our lives and pretend this never happened. A part of Ollie wanted to protest, to argue that there was something between them worth exploring. But the rational part of his mind knew she was right. Continuing down this path would only lead to more pain and destruction. I understand, he said quietly. Sarah offered him a small, sad smile. It's for the best, she said softly. They sat in silence for a few moments, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavily between them. Finally, Sarah stood, smoothing down her dress. Take care, Ollie, she said before turning and walking away, leaving him alone with his thoughts. In the weeks that followed, Ollie threw himself into his work, desperate to distract himself from the turmoil within. He avoided Sarah as much as possible, their interactions limited to polite nods and brief exchanges when unavoidable. But despite his efforts to move on, the guilt remained, a constant companion that gnawed at his conscience. He found himself questioning his own morals, wondering how he had allowed himself to be drawn into such a situation. One evening, as he sat alone in his apartment, his phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. We need to talk. His heart skipped a beat, fear and anticipation swirling within him. He typed out a reply with trembling fingers. Who is this? The response was immediate. Meet me at the park near your office. Ali's mind raced as he considered his options. He knew it was reckless to meet an unknown person under such circumstances, but curiosity and a sense of foreboding compelled him to go. When he arrived at the park, dusk was settling in, casting long shadows across the ground. He scanned the area, searching for any sign of the mysterious messenger. Ollie, over here, a voice called out from behind a cluster of trees. He turned to see a figure stepping into the dim light, a woman he didn't recognize. She was tall and slender, with sharp features and an air of confidence. Who are you? He asked, his unease growing. My name is Layla, she replied, her gaze piercing. We need to talk about Sarah. Ali's blood ran cold at the mention of her name. What about her? I know about your affair, Layla said bluntly. And I know that Hamid is suspicious. Panic surged through Ali. How do you know this? Let's just say I have my sources, she replied cryptically. The point is, you're in danger. What? Ali's heart raced as he processed Layla's warning. The revelation that Hamid was suspicious of his affair with Sarah sent a chill down his spine. He had to act swiftly to protect himself and those he cared about. What do you suggest I do? Ali asked, his voice tinged with desperation. Layla's expression softened slightly. You need to distance yourself from Sarah immediately. Any continued association will only incriminate you further. Hamid is a powerful man. Crossing him could have severe consequences. Ali nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. And what about Sarah? Is she in danger? Layla hesitated before responding. Sarah is resourceful. She knows how to navigate these situations. But it's best for both of you to sever ties. The weight of her words settled heavily on Ollie. He realized that his actions had not only jeopardized his own life but had also entangled others in a web of deceit and danger. Thank you for warning me, Ollie said earnestly. I appreciate your help. Layla gave a curt nod. Just be careful. And remember, some secrets are best kept buried. With that, she turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving Ollie alone with his thoughts. Determined to heed Layla's advice, Ollie made the difficult decision to cut all contact with Sarah. He deleted her number from his phone, avoided places they used to frequent, and immersed himself in work to distract his mind. Days turned into weeks, and Ollie began to feel a semblance of normalcy returning to his life. He maintained a professional demeanor at work, ensuring that his interactions with Hamid were cordial and efficient. The fear of discovery still lingered, but he took solace in the fact that he had taken steps to rectify his mistakes. One evening, as Ali was closing up the office, Hamid approached him. "Ali, do you have a moment?" Hamid asked, his tone neutral. Ali's heart skipped a beat, but he managed a calm reply. "Of course, sir. What can I do for you?" Hamid studied him for a moment before speaking. "I've noticed you've been working diligently lately. I appreciate your dedication." Relief washed over Ali, and he offered a modest smile. "Thank you, sir. I believe in giving my best to the job." Hamid nodded, his expression unreadable. "That's good to hear. Keep up the good work." As Hamid walked away, Ali couldn't shake the feeling that there was more beneath the surface of their conversation. But he chose not to dwell on it, focusing instead on maintaining his resolve to move forward. Months passed, and Ali's life gradually stabilized. He met someone new, a kind-hearted woman named Aisha, who brought joy and stability into his world. They took things slow, building a relationship founded on trust and mutual respect. One day, as Ali and Aisha strolled through a local market, he spotted a familiar face in the crowd, Sarah. Their eyes met briefly, and a silent understanding passed between them. She gave a faint smile before disappearing into the throng of people. Ali felt a pang of nostalgia but quickly pushed it aside. He had made his choices and was determined to live with them. As he glanced at Aisha, who was examining a piece of jewelry at a nearby stall, he felt a deep sense of gratitude for the second chance he had been given. The past had taught him valuable lessons about the complexities of human relationships and the consequences of straying from one's moral compass. Ali vowed to cherish the present and build a future free from the shadows of infidelity and deceit. With Aisha by his side, he looked forward to a life filled with honesty, love, and unwavering commitment, a life where the mistakes of yesterday served as guiding lights for a brighter tomorrow.